Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students, where we get to hear teachers and students tell us their extraordinary stories. My hope is that through this podcast, ordinary teachers around the world can relate to the stories they hear and get some timely suggestions. My name is Catherine Grace Chan, and my daddy's name is Alan Chan.
Today, I'm delighted to invite Yuna onto our podcast. Yuna is a medical student studying at a university in UK. She went to primary school in Hong Kong before moving to England for secondary. So she's in a brilliant position to share her experiences of the different school environments. Yuna is actually my cousin's daughter, whom I've only met twice in her whole life. So I'm very excited to chat to Yuna today and catch up. Let's welcome Yuna. Hello, Yuna.
Hi.
Anything that you want to add to that intro that I missed out?
I think that was good.
Yeah.
Would you like me to call you Mr. Chang today?
Anything that you like. Alan's fine too.
Okay. All right.
I am curious then. So the first thing would be about medical students. So have you always wanted to study medicine from young?
I've always been interested in sciences, I'd say. So
Yep.
I think human biology is the most interesting. And then around when I was about 15, thinking about what to do in the future, I was thinking towards medicine for university. And originally I was just interested in the sciences part, but nowadays I'm more interested in caring for patients and healthcare in general. So
okay, so it was your first year at uni this past year, right?
Yeah.
How's it been? So was it what you expected? Any big surprises?
Academic-wise, it's been okay. I'm on summer break now, so it's really nice,
Yep.
but it's been quite intense. And then in terms of university life, I think I've settled in okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's one of the most competitive areas in, well, pretty much the most competitive ones, right? And like, obviously, once you get in, I feel sometimes you're with pretty much the creme de la creme, like with pretty much all top students within that class. How do you feel about that? I'm just curious about that.
Well, this is something I wanted to touch on later, actually.
Oh yeah, sure,
the competitiveness about school, but I guess we could talk about it now. So in secondary, I've also been in sort of a competitive environment. So it hasn't really felt that much of a jump. I still think we're all interested in medicine, and although it is quite tough material, it's not too bad, I think.
Okay, so have you had like any imposter syndrome where you feel like particularly, I guess maybe near the start of the year, where when you first started, did you ever doubt like, oh, do I really belong here? Am I really good enough, kind of thing?
I think surprisingly no, but I didn't have the feeling for a while, like, wow, I can't believe I made it. Just because the application was so rough. But I think that's quite natural for all students to feel some sort of imposter syndrome, because we are only just adults stepping into uni. So yeah, I think it'll get worse once I get to actually being a doctor, but for now I'm all right.
Cool. All right, so that's you currently. So we're going to rewind and take you all the way back to your, maybe we start with primary school first, because like I said in my intro, you said you went to primary school in Hong Kong, right? Do you want to describe what your primary school life was like just generally, how did you feel about it? Were you happy in primary school and stuff like that?
So I went to an international school, and it was quite a small school. So I made some good friends, and it was pretty smooth, I'd say, from year 1 to year 6. Yeah.
So
I
you
think
weren't
I enjoyed
under
school a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's very different from a typical Hong Kong experience. So most people I speak to who are from Hong Kong and who have studied primary school in Hong Kong, often they would tell us about how intensive it is, how much homework you get. So I guess you didn't quite get that, right?
No, we had exams, but it wasn't too intense. So I found the learning environment quite nice there.
Yeah. And homework wasn't like, you didn't get too much homework, right?
Not that I remember.
Probably not much then. Right. So,
No.
and then you finally moved to the UK for secondary. Was it immediately after you finished primary school then, or?
Yeah, it was. So straight into secondary, I went to a boarding school. It was an
Mm,
all-girls school.
yep.
So quite a different environment, but yeah,
Mm,
and then I was there for 7 years.
yeah, yeah. Was that a family decision to move you to the UK, or was it more that, oh, you really wanted to go overseas kind of thing?
I think it was a family decision.
Yep.
I don't know, from my parents' perspective, it might be quite strange sending your child
Mm, mm.
overseas to different school and then only seeing them for the holidays, really.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I I think they thought it'd be good for my English.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to meet a huge number of people from
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
backgrounds, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's a lot more diverse in the UK.
Yeah, actually, I want to go a bit deeper than that because I recently actually did some supply teaching, kind of covering for teachers at a boarding school actually in England where I live, and it was quite an experience. So some of them were really young, like you were, I guess, like 12, or even 11, and living away from home. How was that experience for you? Like when you first started boarding school, all the way away from home with lots of strangers. Yeah, just do you want to tell us a bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so I think the first year, we're around 11 years old. So a lot of my friends were homesick all the time and then
Yeah.
quite struggling in class. Sometimes they'd start bursting into tears or something, just
Mm,
missing
mm.
home. I found it okay personally. I quite
Oh,
liked
okay.
not constantly being at home. I thought it was a fun change, but I could see from my friends' perspectives, it was quite shocking just to
Yeah,
be left behind in a school environment 24/7. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
Were your
and then
classmates
over the
mostly
years,
from England or were they from like anywhere around the world?
I think it's a good mix. Yeah, we had a lot of international students, so all around the world.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm. How long did it take them to settle? So it seems like you didn't take too long, but for them, did it take a whole year or like did it get much better after the second year or after the first year? Sorry.
I think yeah, about a year, and then everyone starts to settle in, and then the older girls would be nice to the younger ones just because they're feeling a bit
Mm,
lonely or something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, not too bad.
And how often did you go home then? Like back to Hong Kong?
About once a year
Once
or
a year.
sometimes
Yeah.
in Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess with technology nowadays, like it's much easier like to keep in touch with your family, isn't it? So it'll be very different if you were doing that about 30 years ago where it was just telephone calls and stuff. Um, but yeah, it seems like you had a pretty nice boarding school. Like, so you stayed in boarding for 6 years or 7 years, right?
Yeah, so by that point I felt pretty independent, and then the university switch wasn't so difficult because I was basically living
Ah, yeah,
kind
that's
of by myself.
true. Yeah, 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 yeah. If you had to give advice to parents who are considering sending their children to boarding school, what would you say?
Um, Definitely ask if the child is ready first,
Mm,
instead
mm,
of just dropping them off there. And I think because you're with a whole group of other people just like you, and you're all thrust in this new environment,
mm, 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 mm,
um, I think parents can be reassured that I mean they'll be okay with all the other
mm.
students.
How many people were
And also,
just
yeah.
another question about boarding experience? How many people were you sharing a room with?
So the first year my first room was with 7 other people, so it's
Mm,
quite bad. I really
yeah.
enjoyed it, but that's a lot. And then gradually, as you get older, it becomes groups of 6 or 4, and then
Mm,
eventually you can potentially get your own room.
mm,
Um,
mm, mm.
yeah,
Just to me, that experience. I mean, I shared a room with my brothers, but I'm just thinking like maybe going from sharing a room with your sibling or even potentially having your own room to sharing with 7 other girls. That must have been quite a tough experience at the start.
yeah. So you learn a lot of valuable lessons from a young age, just living
Yeah.
with so many different people you've never met before and having
Mm,
to constantly be nice to each other. So
mm,
there are some tensions sometimes, but then you learn how to resolve it quite
mm,
maturely,
mm,
I'd say.
mm, mm, mm,
Um, I think that's a really good thing, actually.
But I think it's a good point, though, that you made earlier, where you said, I think the boarding experience helped you to really settle at university. I'm sure there's a big contrast. You can see that those who have never lived away from home, like your new classmates now, right, who never lived away from home, I think they probably got really homesick in the first week or two, or just sick from drinking too much alcohol. Anyway, let's go. That's pretty much you, like in a nutshell, right? Like normally what we go on to is to talk about like a topic and a bit deeper. So what topic did you want to talk about?
So we did touch on it, but I'd like to go back to talking about being in a really competitive environment in secondary school. You know, as teenagers being put in this school where you're trying to compete with each other. Especially because mine was girls only. So there's often a stereotype of it being quite intense or quite academically toxic. Whereas I think going through it, it wasn't actually the case. Yeah, it was because it was quite competitive. I think we all tried to help each other get through it. So having like a supportive peer system, where even though we're competing for the same grades, we're trying to not constantly talk about school, even though we're living in there the whole time. So I think people often assume that maybe we all hate each other or have secret resentment or something, but I think it was quite, I've made my friends for life, and then we'd all help each other. So
so you felt it wasn't really the case, right? That it was really, really competitive. Well, like I do want to explore a bit more about competitiveness. Like, was it like, I mean, obviously, do people think it's competitive because, like you mentioned, grades, right? You're competing for grades. Does that mean that grades were kind of like on a curve, as in only certain people get A's, and like, so within the class there's only a set percentage of A's, or was that not the case?
I think there wasn't really a curve. There was just more whatever the teacher thought your score was. They'd give you an A or a B. So no, there wasn't any sort of cases of trying to tear each other down, which I think a curve can do.
Yes, I agree too. Then where do you think the competition comes from? If it's not competing for grades, is it competing for top spot possibly?
I think there is an element of that, but one thing I think my school did really well is that teachers never pitted the students against each other.
Yeah,
so,
that's really important. Yes.
We don't have a system where we rank students, whereas in Hong Kong, I think that's quite common.
Exactly.
That every exam you do, there's a huge board and they put everyone's name on a list and rank them. We've never had it. I think no, it's unheard of here in the UK. I think that just breeds a toxic environment, I think. But no, we never had anything like that. And even if someone did really well in a test or something, then the teacher would commend them individually and not maybe in front of a whole class, just because that sort of thing can flip really quickly.
Right. Yeah, sure. So that's something that the school did well, right? Anything else that you think the school did to kind of help you guys work together rather than compete against each other?
So I think the school offered some sort of academic support and tutoring. So an example I can think of is in my last year there, I was really struggling with maths. And because it was just before my A-levels, it was probably not a good time to be failing. But instead of going to my friends for help or trying to get them to use their time to help me, the teachers encouraged my maths teachers. They offered private lessons, even though they really didn't have to. It was just in between lessons or during lunch times that they'd help me every week. I just thought that was really, they didn't have to do that. They could have just sent me to maybe another private tutor that the school had. But it was the fact that my personal teachers tried to help me in such an important time in my maths career, I suppose. I think that was really special. Yeah.
I probably should ask you this at the start, but what subjects did you do for A level?
Oh, I did biology, chemistry, Latin, and maths, and then
Like extended
my
maths as
maths
well.
didn't do great, so I quit that one.
No.
But yeah.
Okay, sure. I'm also curious about the all girls environment. So you mentioned that the boarding was an all girls boarding. Um, was the school also all girls, or was it just the boarding part?
The whole school was
How do
girls.
you feel about that? Like, do you like on in hindsight now? Obviously, at uni you can't get an all girls uni, but in hindsight, do you think it was a good thing, or would you have preferred like maybe a mix of boys in the school as well?
I think it was really nice actually. I think I was able to form closer friendships.
Mm,
And I don't know, there's a sense of sisterhood and trying to help each other. And
yeah.
even older girls would be supportive of the younger ones. There was some sort of mentoring schemes as
Mm,
well, just to help. Um, I did go to co-ed primary and then
mm,
now at uni because it's co-ed as well. I
mm,
don't think there was too much of an issue there.
mm-hmm.
Trying to, I did ask my friends this, and they didn't think I went to a girls' school. So I'm
Oh,
assuming that
okay.
means I'm pretty socially adjusted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. So so
no,
you
I
don't
think I
like
really
you don't
enjoyed
feel
it.
like you're a typical girls' school kind of girl.
No, even though yeah, we had things called socials, so we talked
Yep,
to maybe we'd have connections with other boys' schools, but
yep.
yeah, even without them, I think it, we turned out pretty normal. So
Okay, no, that's really good. How about your experience of being an international student? So obviously, with your background, studying in the UK, did you feel like you were an outsider, or you were totally fine because you did mention there were other international students there too, right?
yeah, no, it was quite diverse. I never really thought that I was different in any way, or that I
Mm,
had fewer opportunities. I think maybe 10, 20 years ago would have been quite different, but nowadays
mm,
it's
mm,
pretty,
mm, mm,
people are
mm.
quite understanding.
Sure. How about identity wise then? So if I ask you, like, do you relate more now? Like, do you see yourself as Chinese or British or even because I mean I know your background, so your mum's from South Korea, right? Do you see
Yeah.
yourself as Korean?
That's something I thought a lot about, because
Yeah,
I intend to stay in the UK to
for
be a
work.
doctor.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, my parents never taught me Chinese or we learnt Chinese in primary school, and then I
Yeah.
forgot it completely because I was just really bad at it. So I think it's such a shame that obviously I could have tried harder and asked them to teach
Mm,
me, but
mm.
no, they really pushed for me to learn English just
Yeah.
because yeah, my dad grew up in the UK. True.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say I'm British, and then if people inquire further, then I give them the whole backstory. And then by that point, they
Yeah.
probably regret asking. So I usually just say I'm British, and if people don't
That's interesting that
probe more.
yeah, so I totally relate to that because I had this a similar thing where I'm always going through my life thinking, oh, am I more Chinese or am I more British? Would
Yeah.
you consider going to Hong Kong or to even to Korea to work in the future? I mean, you did say that you're thinking of staying here in the UK, but do you think you might?
I think I'd like to, but I'm quite comfortable in the UK just because of language. I would have to definitely learn Cantonese or Korean just to feel like a normal citizen instead of someone who's just visiting.
For your
So
Cantonese,
yeah,
is it like working level or not even that? Like,
oh, I probably couldn't introduce myself. It's actually
oh
really bad.
really? Oh
Yeah,
wow.
so it is quite a shame. I think I'd have a lot more opportunities if I did actually try to
Mm.
learn my languages.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess like it is understandable because you went to an international primary school as well, where like obviously English is the main language. Were you taught like Mandarin Chinese in the international school as well?
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, I've completely forgotten. Um, no, I think the Chinese teaching was quite good. It's
Just
just
you
found it so
then.
difficult. Yeah,
Have you thought that you might make that as part of your to-do list at university?
possibly, or maybe beyond. I don't know. I could start this summer actually.
Just from your tone, I think it's doubtful. You're probably
Yeah.
reading medical books and journals and stuff rather than improving your Chinese. Right. I mean, that's quite a lot already. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention related to kind of differences between studying Hong Kong and the UK, or just your experience of studying in a boarding school?
Um, I'm not sure really.
No, no.
Yeah.
What advice, just maybe one more from me then. What advice would you give to a student who is applying for medicine at uni? Because like I said at the start, it's a very competitive process. Um, and I mean, some people like obviously like they really, really want to do it, but they never actually get the chance. So if you had a chance to speak to like let's say potentially a secondary school student who is thinking of applying, what kind of advice would you have for them?
I think it's really good to get a lot of knowledge about being a doctor and life as a
Mm,
doctor, and if you really want to pursue it. If so,
mm,
then there are loads of online resources where you can maybe
yep.
practice for the aptitude tests and practice for
Mm,
interviews. I
mm,
think you want to give your application the strongest chance, and even if you don't get in on the first time, it's not a fault with your application. It's more that it's a really competitive process. So it is a lot
mm,
about luck. So definitely, even if you fail the first time, that you always
yep.
have more chances to reapply.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah.
So it improves the knowledge base. I mean, what did you do particularly? Like, was it that you talked to people in your life who were doctors, or was it mostly relying on online resources?
It was mostly online resources. Just
Yeah.
because of COVID, I couldn't actually do any work experience.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it was
true.
just
Yeah.
watching a lot of videos about doctors talking about their own lives,
Mm,
what
mm,
they like
mm,
about the job, and
mm, mm.
then just using their experiences to try formulate my own application.
Sure, sure. Like obviously with social media and stuff, like are there any doctors in particular that you enjoy following? Because actually I do have a few doctors I follow for mostly for nutrition advice.
Hmm.
I'm just curious about you. Like what are there any doctors you would recommend following? Like for example, they might have a YouTube channel or maybe they're even on Instagram or possibly
I think,
TikTok.
yeah, definitely YouTube videos I like watching. There's this one anatomy channel that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
They do show the actual pro section, so it might not be
Mm,
good for squeamish people, but I think that sort of those sorts of videos are educational and they just really inspire,
yeah.
I think, future doctors. Yeah,
Well, if they're squeamish, probably they shouldn't be considering becoming a
maybe
doctor in
not.
the first place. Right.
Yeah.
So apart from knowledge, do you think there's anything else that really helped you in your preparation to, like I said, apply for medicine, or even for interviews? Like, so I'm pretty sure those are pretty tough too.
Um, yeah, so I actually have quite a few friends who are also applying for medicine.
Mm,
So in terms of interview prep, we would ask each other questions or
mm, mm,
save each other from panicking if we had an interview the next day. So I think that's quite a good thing if you have other people applying with you.
mm,
Um, there are also resources online. So I'm currently part of a program where they're trying to widen participation for applying medical students who want to apply.
mm,
They help with UCAT and like all the exam preparation
yeah.
and interviews. So and those are completely free. So there are
Mm,
actually
mm,
resources online that people
mm,
can do some mentoring and
mm,
some
mm, mm.
sort of tutoring to
Ah, do you
help
want to share? Do you want to
people
share that with
interview.
me afterwards? Maybe I can probably include that in show notes so people can
Yeah,
find it
that'd
if
be
they're
great.
interested. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any surprise questions during your interviews, or it
Um,
was pretty straightforward, like pretty much what people said online?
there there are quite a few scenarios where they give you just to see how you would respond. So
Yeah.
for the uni I'm at now, they ask so many strange questions, just about like it seemed like completely unrelated things. It's like they
Okay.
were just trying to get me to talk.
Right.
I don't know. And then I thought it went really badly, so I cried immediately afterwards.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought it went terribly. But we made it. So I think our applications are so rough. So I really do feel for people having to.
Yeah, yeah. How about the
Yeah.
personal statement then? Did you put a lot of work into that personal statement to obviously to
Yeah, I
get a
think
chance
they're
for
getting
interview?
rid of I think they're getting rid of personal statements for medicine. I'm not sure.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think.
I'll take your word for it, because I don't really know this field very well. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of drafts. It wasn't too bad.
Did you get your teachers to kind of take a look at them for you?
Yeah, no, that was quite helpful, but it was a lot of embellishing, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, I think even for us teachers, sometimes it can be difficult, because, like, I've only ever applied for one university degree, right? And so if my students are applying for like medicine, like I'm like, I think this is okay, but who knows, right? So it's useful always to get some insider's information. Okay, are you ready to move on to some quick fire questions?
Okay.
How did teachers describe you back in your secondary school life?
Quite shy and hardworking.
Does the shy go hand in hand with being a doctor? Like, obviously, with being a doctor, you're gonna have to meet a lot of strangers. Do you think that's kind of? Did you ever doubt whether you can become a doctor or not?
All the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, I was a bit worried about being a doctor, whether I'd be okay talking to patients, just because I do enjoy talking to people. It's just I just don't feel like I'm good at it. So I'm lacking in confidence in that area, but I think hopefully by the end of my 6 years I'll be better. But it is something I'm actively trying to work on. So,
and coming onto this podcast was great experience for you,
yeah,
I'm sure.
my heart is beating really fast.
Right. What should schools or teachers do more of, do you think, to help students?
I'd say I really appreciate it when teachers get involved in extracurricular activities or events.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really helps with the school spirit.
I think that's a really good point. How about doing less often?
Maybe picking favorites.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, so true. Yeah,
it's a minor point.
Sometimes it's quite obvious though, like when a teacher has a favorite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something actually I work really hard not to do, not to have a favorite, or not to let people know I have a favorite. But at the same time, like, it can be difficult, like for teachers, when a student is so hardworking and they do all the homework, maybe a bit more, like you have to love them so much. But yeah, we try not to show it. Right. I know you're a very studious person, so I've heard from your gran that you are very, very hardworking. I'm just wondering, like, what do you think was the most helpful in terms of helping you to learn better?
I think I like going to the library with my friends, even if we're not talking, we're just studying side by side. And then during COVID, this is a bit unconventional, but I used to watch YouTube videos where they were called like study with me.
Yeah. Oh, I know
so
which
it'd just
ones.
be someone studying in science. Yeah. I think that's quite helpful for motivation.
Yeah. It's interesting that, because I always thought, oh, it's a bit like from my perspective, I always thought it was a bit weird. Like I prefer studying by myself. Like I'm like, why would I need to watch someone else? But it does seem to work for some people, right?
Yeah, it does.
And also, I've heard more and more from different, like particularly from certain YouTubers, that studying together with a group of friends is actually really good, in terms, as long as you don't distract each other, right? But like it's just really good to keep up your spirits, particularly during very stressful exam periods.
Yeah, it's a good bonding experience.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you have any funny, strange, or scary, touching moments from school that you can share with us?
I don't think there's one moment that particularly stands out. I just have good memories of, even though we're supposed to be learning in lessons, my teachers would just start maybe going on tangents about things they thought were interesting that most of the time weren't related to the lesson. And also fun memories of just gossiping in class, which probably
Gossiping about the teacher or about other things?
Oh no, just with the teacher, but about unrelated things. I think yeah. You're probably not supposed to do that, but I think it's really helpful just interacting to the teacher, like not as teacher and student, just in a more friendly way. And you just really see their personalities as they're not
yeah.
just your teachers, they are actually people with outside lives and everything.
Yeah, actually, no, that's a really interesting point. It's kind of like the teacher removing the facade. Like, it's like, oh, I'm a human after all. I'm not just here like a teaching machine to just teach you, right? So no, that's a
Yeah,
very interesting
exactly.
point there. Right, I've fired lots of questions at you, so it's a chance for you to ask me a question. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, I do have a question. It's relating back to what I said earlier about, I think it's from my perspective as a student, I really enjoyed it when teachers will get involved with after
Mm,
school activities and
yeah.
events. As a teacher yourself, do you think
Mm.
it's realistic to ask to want teachers to spend more time when they already give up so much of their time
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
school?
Yeah, no,
Or
actually,
is it
I think
more difficult?
no. It's a very valid question because I mean, I think you're already seeing kind of the pros and cons, right? So teachers spending more
Yeah,
time after school, of course, it takes more of their time. I think it really depends. So I like personally, I have certain interests. So like for example, playing football. So if
yeah,
I were part of the football club, which I was actually in my previous school, so I was part of the football club, so we would have to like obviously play after school. Might have to take them certain places. I'm actually okay with that because I enjoy it so much, and it was actually my only exercise of the week sometimes. So I actually sometimes look forward to that experience. But I can also see the other side of the argument where, oh, imagine I was put onto the football team, but I hate football and I want to go home
yeah,
instead, right? So I think the balance is where if teachers can have a bit more autonomy in terms of okay, which extracurricular activity they are part of, rather than being assigned, I think that they would enjoy much more. But yeah, generally, I think most teachers are willing to get involved. And I think you made a really good point because I also find that when I do things outside the classroom, I get to know the students much, much better. Like you see a totally different
yeah.
perspective, particularly actually the weaker students. Like within the classroom, they might not be like, so I taught English before, right? So they might not be very good at English and they might hate the subject. But when, oh, they're playing basketball or football, you see a totally different person. So yeah, that's what I think about extracurricular activities. Thanks for the
Okay, no,
question.
that's really interesting. Yeah.
Um, my last few questions for you is if you could go back and change how you approach school, was there anything that you would change?
I think I would like to be more involved in school clubs, I'd say.
Mm, mm,
I was just focused on studying all the time.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm, mm.
I think it would have been fun to do some school clubs, or just at least get some positions where I'd have to make, or actually have some ideas and present
Mm.
them, like leadership positions.
Yeah. Any particular clubs that you had in your mind? Not, I'm guessing probably not
Um,
football.
yeah, not sports. I enjoyed being part of. We had a school newspaper. That was quite fun, and that's
Mm.
something I still do at uni. Actually,
Okay.
um, I don't know. I think I just wants to be more involved instead of just
Yeah.
editing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, fair enough. And my very last question for you is just simply about teachers. Are there any teachers that you remember particularly well for good or for bad reasons? And I always just put in a reminder, if they are bad reasons, you do not need to mention their names. For good reasons,
Hmm.
please do mention their names. Yeah.
I think for the most part, I actually really liked all my teachers.
Yeah.
Um, but there is one moment that came to mind. When I was in year six, so in Hong Kong,
Mm,
my Chinese teacher, I don't know what the context was, but she started shouting at me in front
mm,
of the entire class, saying that
mm.
um, she was just really disappointed that my Chinese was so bad, and she knew my dad because of parent-teacher meetings. So
Yeah.
I think she was saying something like, "You're such a disappointment. Why don't you know Chinese very well, or Cantonese, or Korean?
Oh,
You only speak English." And I at the time it didn't bother me at all. I think I didn't burst out into tears.
yeah.
But thinking back now, that is a wild thing to say to
Yeah.
a 10-year-old. Um, and the fact that I
Absolutely.
still remember it, and it was probably my only bad interaction with the teacher, I'd say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried to see it from his perspective,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's hard to justify
Wow.
to a 9-year-old.
Like yeah, absolutely. Like that's an arrow to the heart. Like I'm surprised you didn't burst into tears because I probably would have burst into tears if a teacher
it
shouted at me
was
like that.
logical. I mean, it was true, to be fair. So maybe I didn't actually take it to heart. But yeah, no, that's
So you
shocking.
rationalized it and thought, oh yeah, she has a point.
Yeah.
Did you share with your parents about this afterwards, or anyone,
Um,
like with friends?
I
Or
don't think my
they
friends
kind of
really,
witnessed
yeah.
it happen, right?
No, they were just, I think my friends at the time were just concerned that the teacher was yelling rather than what she was actually saying. So I
Right,
don't think
right.
anyone actually remembers. But yeah, I have told my parents this.
Mm. And what did they say?
So, I think they just felt bad at they didn't I was bad at Chinese, I suppose. Yeah. It's
Right,
okay, we
right.
move on.
Interesting. No, I think yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And that's a really interesting experience. And actually I think the core theme throughout our conversation today has been really about your identity, I would say, because you have
Yeah.
mentioned that, okay, you kind of feel bad that you didn't maybe study as much in Chinese or try as hard in Chinese as you probably could have, or even in Korean. And I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
languages open doors. And so I would leave you with a little task to think about for your university life. You still have 5 years to go, right? So maybe
Yeah.
that's something you can work on, because I mean, it's something I did as well at uni, where I tried to learn Mandarin Chinese, and then later I went to mainland China to teach English and to try to
Yeah.
like work on my Chinese too. So that's my little task for you. But I do want to thank you for coming onto the podcast. It's been really interesting listening to your story. And yeah, really learned lots of stuff about your experiences at boarding school and also moving from different countries to another. So thank you so much, Yuna.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yuna went to a supposedly very competitive all-girls boarding school, but she didn't feel it was as competitive as people expected. She gave some insights into how to make a competitive environment less competitive. And that first one is to not rank students based on exam performance, or at least not publishing these. Secondly, not pitting students against each other. So, for example, teachers might praise students who did well privately rather than in front of the whole class. And finally, encouraging students to help one another. So it could be encouraging them to form study groups or having mentoring programs, so that it becomes a win-win situation where students are rooting for one another. I hope you enjoyed listening to Yuna's extraordinary story, and please do join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.